Metal Gear Solid 2 turns 20 this year. That's right, it's been 2 decades since we first experienced this. And this.
Good.
And of course, this. I wanted to use this anniversary as an opportunity to take a look back at Hideo Kojima's ambitious, intricate, and, let's be honest, divisive masterpiece. So let's get started. At first glance, these days, it looks like, I don't know, just another PS2 game, especially when compared to modern games. But allow me to set things in perspective. Let me take you back to issue 17 of PlayStation 2 Official Magazine, which came with a demo disc. There were 2 major games on that disc, Metal Gear Solid 2 and Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex. MGS2... Wrath of Cortex.
How do I get into these situations?
Look, I like Crash Bandicoot, but like most early PlayStation 2 games, it was little more than a PS1 game with a higher polygon count. MGS2, on the other hand, was one of the first true next-generation games. Unlike the visuals though, some parts of the gameplay haven't aged quite as well. These days, an intro to a AAA game would usually find a way to integrate tutorials into a cinematic set piece to get the player used to both the narrative and the controls. In MGS2, it's just 13 minutes of cutscenes. The closest we have is a cutscene of a game being played. I'm playing the HD version on Xbox One, and the cutscenes took so long the console actually dimmed and went to sleep because it thought I'd stop playing. Actually, you know what, now that I think about it, it's got nothing to do with dated video game design, it's just a Hideo Kojima trope. Everyone knows that when you play one of his games, you're in for some long-ass cutscenes. I mean look, MGS4's ending cutscene was over an hour long, and MGS5 had almost an hour of secret, unfinished endings. Alright, so with the cutscenes over, it's time to explore the tanker. You instantly notice this part of the game is filled to the brim with Easter eggs. There are the obvious ones like the Raiden toy and the posters of girls in the lockers, but there are also more subtle ones like being able to move characters around inside the codec and have Snake answer in either a positive or a negative way depending on the button you press.
Sorry, but no Mei Ling this time. Call me on the codec when you want to save. What do you think you're doing, Snake? You don't have enough to keep you busy? Try to remember the mission if you...
The game is filled with little details as well. The bottles, the sofa, the bell make different sounds when you shoot them. When you get inside, Snake will be dripping and leave footprints the guards will notice. Again, not really a big deal these days, but back then, this was the competition. Obviously, the PlayStation 2 still had many limitations, but the developers tried to work around them, like setting the tanker chapter in the middle of the night with the rain pouring down. That way they were able to obscure the New York skyline you see from the ship. The guards all have different attitudes, some will gladly jiggle for you, while others decide to be assholes. Alright, now it's time to take on Olga. Wow, this chick drops a ton of loot. Alright, with that done, we can get back to messing around. As a kid, I'd waste all of my ammo drawing smiley faces on the glass, or shooting the bottles at the bar. Something I didn't realize until this very playthrough is that the ice cubes will actually slowly melt. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Even 20 years later, you can still find something new about this game. Oh, here we go. Ah, shit. Alright, down into the depths of the tanker we go. You know what, the hell with these stairs, I've got a shortcut. Whoops.
Good.
Snake, I think you're having a bit too much fun there. Oh, say it. Say it.
Metal Gear. More of these? Is that all you think about?
Ooh, look at Ocelot's ponytail.
It's so hot right now.
Actually, thinking about it, Kojima really had a thing for guys with long hair. Snake, Otacon, Raiden, Ocelot, Vamp, and everyone with short hair or bald just dies. Look, Golukovich, Fat Man, Stillman, Solidus, Olga.
I live on through this arm!
Damn, Liquid's arm looks huge on Ocelot's body. It reminds me of that Quagmire bit from Family Guy. Alright, so Liquid Ocelot betrays both the Russians and the Marines, hijacks Metal Gear Ray, and sinks the tanker. There was actually supposed to be a playable section here where Snake had to escape the tanker, but I think it was cut due to technical limitations. We pick up 2 years later at the Big Shell cleanup facility where Mr. Kojima introduces the biggest troll moment in video game history.
What are you...
You're a man?
2 decades later, and Kojima's motivation for this bait and switch is still a bit unclear. In some interviews, he states it's because having to explain the tutorial to a seasoned soldier like Snake would have felt unnatural. In other interviews, Kojima says it's because he wanted the game to appeal to a broader female audience. But then he also mentioned that he wanted the story of Snake to be told from the third person, inspired by the Sherlock Holmes novels where the story was actually told from Dr. Watson's point of view. Honestly, it could be all of those things, or it could just be an excuse for Kojima wanting to subvert the player's expectations, because after all, that's kind of what the game's all about. Sons of Liberty was actually the first Metal Gear Solid game I ever played. I personally didn't have much of an attachment to Solid Snake back then, so the Raiden surprise wasn't that much of a shock to me. To be honest, I was just unnerved at how thick his lower half was. He was like one of those reverse bodybuilders. Yeah, Kojima is definitely an arse man.
We're changing your code name for all following communication.
Look at this, the Colonel makes all this fuss about Raiden's codename, and then Rose is like,
Jack, is everything all right? Jack, can you hear me? Jack, I'm a part of this mission.
Colonel, what the hell is going on?
ah, what a beautiful day. Oh, fucking hell, stupid birds. Ah, shit! Yeah, that's it, feel the wrath of thunder thighs. Gentlemen, if you think your girl is needy, just take a look at poor Raiden. He's trying to stop terrorists from setting off nukes, and Rose still expects him to remember their anniversary.
What is it, Rose? Talk to me.
I'd rather you figure it out. It's important.
Never mix work and pleasure, boys. So we make our way through the shell and run into Vamp. Oh, the edge. We then meet Pliskin. I'm a bit confused by this part. Does Kojima expect us to believe Snake is dead, and this is a whole new character that looks and sounds and talks just like him? Or is this supposed to be like an inside joke? It's gotta be the latter, right? I mean, it even shows that he's voiced by David Hayter. Anyway, so Snake gives Raiden the cigarettes. Where are you gonna put those, Raiden? Huh? There's another cool Easter egg. If you find this shaver, Raiden will give it to Pliskin. In turn, Snake will be clean-shaven later on in the story. And speaking of story, let's take a moment to talk about the game's narrative. You see, most game sequels, especially back in the day, focused on gameplay rather than narrative. The developers tried to give the player more of what they loved from the first game with a few new gameplay mechanics thrown in. Pokemon Gold and Silver were good examples of this. There were new Pokemon, new regions, new moves, and new mechanics like letting the Pokemon get it on in the daycare center. Metal Gear Solid 2 did have gameplay improvements, but they were not the main focus of the game. Sons of Liberty focused more on expanding the narrative of the first game, or more specifically subverting the narrative of the first game. And there's been loads of videos made about this by YouTubers who are frankly much better than I am, so I'm going to keep this brief and simple. Metal Gear Solid 2 has a lot of story ideas and themes thrown in together. Do they all come together in a clear and coherent narrative? No. But to me, it's better to have tried something overly ambitious and maybe missed the mark a little than, well, make another Wrath of Cortex. Hideo Kojima was like an 11-year-old boy who loved movies. You know what would be cool? Giant mechs. And the world is controlled by a secret government. Oh, and one of the characters is a vampire, and he can run on walls. Oh, and a ship sinks. And two of the main characters are named Jack and Rose. Oh, and a character jumps off a bridge while wearing invisible camo. You get the point, but you know what? Playing it as an 11-year-old, it totally worked. I wouldn't see the plot holes and the convoluted story elements until much later on, at which point it didn't really matter. The game had already made its impact on me. Cerebral, subversive, postmodern, MGS2 is all of those things. It's both the highlight of the series and it's black sheep. It's both deep and corny, but there's one thing we can all agree on. Metal Gear Solid 2 is incredibly ambitious. I'd like to compare Sons of Liberty to another game which came out around the same time, Grand Theft Auto 3. Both are incredibly ambitious games, and I am by no means saying that one game is better than the other. But GTA 3 focused its ambition on scope and gameplay. MGS2, on the other hand, decided to spread the ambition out across all areas: graphics, gameplay, story, dialogue, and themes. It's like skill points in a game, right? You can either max out one skill or spread them all out evenly. But there's never going to be enough skill points for both. Apart from Legacy of Goku for the GBA, that game is firing on all cylinders. Anyway, back to the playthrough. Ah, Fortune, the lady with a giant railgun that's impervious to bullets.
What the hell is that?
You said it, Raiden. And you know what? The final version of Fortune was actually toned down. Originally, Kojima wanted her to also play the saxophone. That's why you can hear it playing when she's on screen.
I'm so sorry, my beauties.
I'm not. And here we have another example of Rose ruining the tone. One moment we have Stillman talking about bombs blowing up the big shell and killing countless people. And then we go straight to a conversation about party and lobster.
I just love lobster. Yeah, can't wait. Woohoo!
Then I'll make a reservation.
Another Easter egg, if you go to the CD connecting bridge straight away, you see Pliskin sneaking away in a box. Oh, I better disarm these bombs quickly, there's not much time.
A few moments later.
And that was our first date.
We watched King Kong in your apartment a bunch of times that night.
Alright, let me just take out the guard's radio. Oh shit, sorry about that. Oh god, it's the seagulls, isn't it? I'll remember that. This parrot seems to have the same reflective field as Fortune. Another Easter egg, if you move the microphone in this scene, you can actually hear Johnny from Metal Gear Solid 1. He's Meryl's future husband, but in this game, his only appearance is relegated to him shitting himself.
No.
Here we go
What about
again.
the president? The only thing we know is that Ames wears a pacemaker.
No, Ames is the guy with the higher polygon count. Oh, he's turning Super Saiyan. Goddamn seagulls!
How about switching to nanocommunications first?
Switch over to nanocommunications so nobody can listen in.
I'm starting to think the developers just didn't want to animate these scenes. Now this is where the shit really starts to hit the fan in the story department. There's a secret group that control the world. The president's their puppet, and the previous president was Solid Snake's brother. And the big shell is a cover-up for a new Metal Gear. And what are the visuals while the president conveys all of this earth-shattering exposition? Well, pretty much a PowerPoint. And here we have the Patriots, and nobody knows who they are. Next slide, please. And this is Arsenal gear, and here it is again from the side. Oh, and I think we're done. It's time for me to die. Wow, that was a heavy scene. I wonder if he has any loot. Nope. And now we're on to the Emma Emmerich section of the game. Looking back at it now, it does feel a little shoehorned in. I mean, Otacon gives you the entire backstory over codec while you're getting a breath of fresh air. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Kojima has all of these ideas and side stories, but the game is already quite bloated, so he just has to jam them in there. But hey, at least this part was tied up, because Kojima loves setting up all of these cool little side stories and mysteries with no intention of resolving them, because he always thinks every Metal Gear Solid game is going to be his last, which is why Metal Gear Solid 4 had to tie up a decade worth of story threads. But back to Emma. The swimming section is probably the only part of the game that I would really like to skip. The controls are bad and you lose track of what direction you're facing whenever you jump up for air. Now, what could make this section even worse? Oh yes, add an escort mission and then some backtracking. So you finally get in the room and Emma is hiding inside a locker. I feel quite bad terrorizing her, but wow, that's a really strong locker. If they would have made the tanker out of the same material, it would have never have sunk. Oh god, she walks so slow, and I always mistake taking Emma's hand for the punch button. Ah, damn it. Actually, this way is probably quicker. Now it's time for an exposition break. Actually, I have to say, the entire concept of an AI that controls the world is as relevant now as it was 20 years ago. Probably even more so as technology has assimilated more and more of our lives and the internet is carved up between several big companies. And the theme of those in power trying to control information circulating around the internet is also quite foreboding. Wow, that was some heavy information. I better save in case I drown.
Well, Jack, it sounds like you and Miss Emma are getting along just fine.
Seriously, I'm literally underwater and you're getting jealous. And now it's time for the pretty sunset. Whoops. Oh, look who we have here. It's finally time to get my revenge.
Raiden, do you actually enjoy abusing helpless animals?
Helpless animals, my ass. Oh look, there's Snake. Hi, Snake.
Watch where you're aiming.
And Emma is almost at the end when Vamp attacks her. Take this. Huh, no damage, hey? Some powerful nanomachines you got there, mate. Unfortunately, there is no way to save Emma. This would be a very sad scene if it wasn't for Raiden's derpy expression. Okay, so then the ninja appears and she's Olga and she knocks out Raiden. And then it's time for the torture sequence. This is followed by a very emotional and heartfelt talk between him and Rose. And then the fuckery begins.
Raiden, Turn the game console off right now. Don't worry, it's a game. It's a game just like usual. Infiltrate. The enemy fortress. Outer heaven. The graveyards are full of indispensable men.
To me, this will always be the most memorable part of the game. Many things in Metal Gear Solid 2 were a first for me, but this was next level. Games like Resident Evil had jump scares, but this was different. This went deeper. It's been 20 years and I still get shivers when I think of this part.
Lolly lule lo. Lolly lule lo.
So then you meet Snake and he gives you the blade. I love it. This game has the balls to introduce an entirely new weapons mechanic at the very end. When I first played this as a kid, this was always the high point of the game for me. I really liked Metal Gear Solid 4, but I couldn't help but feel that it skipped over all the most interesting parts. I imagined it would be more like this section. Snake and Raiden breaking Olga's kid out of the Patriots base. You'd swap places playing as each one of them taking on new Metal Gears together. It would be like a buddy cop game. Also, I know there's been a ton of Metal Gear Solid games at this point, but I feel like we never actually got enough of Solid Snake himself. He was a sprite in the old games. Metal Gear Solid 1 then went on to build up his legacy, and then there really wasn't that much of him in this game. And by the time Metal Gear Solid 4 rolled around, he was a dying old man. I feel like this was the character's prime, and we missed it. But anyway, back to this game. So, Snake and Raiden make their way through Arsenal Gear and finally reach Solidus. He then explains that he doesn't want Arsenal Gear at all, he wants the names of the Patriots to get revenge. And now it's time for Hideo Kojima's patented backstabbathon. Solidus betrays Fortune, Ocelot betrays Solidus, Liquid's hand betrays Ocelot, and then the Patriots betray Liquid. You know what, looking back at it now, I don't think Solidus was such a bad guy after all. He wanted to take back personal freedoms from the Patriots, he supported civil rights. Oh yeah, but then he kind of trained child soldiers, and then he crashed Arsenal Gear into Manhattan, killing thousands. Never mind. Speaking of which, did you ever think this whole sequence was a bit abrupt? We see Arsenal cruising down the Hudson River, and then suddenly Arsenal's already crashed into Manhattan. Well, there's a reason for it. You see, the game came out only a few months after the September 11th attacks, and the developers thought it would be in bad taste to show Arsenal destroying Manhattan. But it was too late to change the game, so they just took that part out. But if you have the Document of Metal Gear Solid 2 disc, you can still see the 3D model of the city. And so, here we are, the climactic battle between Raiden and Solidus. Well, hold on a sec. First, I've got to sit through 12 minutes of dialogue from the Patriots AI. Alright, Jack, let's fight to the death. What? You've got to take it? Sure, don't mind me. I'll just be here, playing with my tentacles. Okay, look, this entire speech, yeah, it's a bit bloated, and I can understand why some players may find elements of it pretentious and convoluted. I don't want to get too deep, but if you go back and listen to this, it's quite disturbing how relevant some of it is today.
In the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
All this junk data, preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
Look, I'm not saying Hideo Kojima predicted the future or anything, but...
They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
Okay, yeah, he predicted the future. Raiden then defeats Solidus and rendezvous with Snake. The two men have a deep heart-to-heart while the city of New York sends 4 policemen to investigate the gigantic floating fortress that crashed into their city. Look at this guy, he's like, huh, would you look at that? Oh well, don't want to be late for work. Mate, I don't think your office building exists anymore. Raiden then meets Rose and they talk about all the wonderful things they can pass on to their children. And that's Metal Gear Solid 2. It's a game with lots of lofty messages, but I think at its core, MGS2 is about the idea of freedom versus control, and the dangers of both, and the consequences of both, and reality, and meaning, and letting go of the past, but embracing the future, and passing on your experiences. Okay, it's about a lot of things. As I said, Kojima tried to pack a lot of content into this game. If you want a proper thematic breakdown, then go and watch one of those amazing 3-hour videos. I'm just here to tell you that you can see Vamp in the crowd at the end. Lastly, what AAA action game ends with a smooth jazz number?
And the sky up above
but somehow it works. And actually, that's the best way I can describe Metal Gear Solid 2. Somehow, it works.